This is a new tool demo, so I know that everybody's going to want to know the accuracy right out of the box. So to save myself from the comments, I figure I might as well do some quick accuracy cuts. This is Festool's newest cordless offering, and that is the Festool KSC 60 KAPEX sliding compound miter saw. This is the little brother to the already existing KS 120 corded miter saw. Now, with that being said, there are a lot of differences, one being very obvious with this KAPEX versus the corded one. In this video, I'm going to show you all the new features of this great new miter saw. So first I want to start out just putting this thing up on an MFT, because that first part is important, and I can show you a lot of the features here before we move into some of the more job site friendly features. If I was to tilt this saw back, what you're going to see is you're going to see these rubber feet that are underneath the bottom, and there's a total of 4. Well, the great thing about that is that those feet actually line up perfectly with the MFT holes on an MFT top. And so what that does is that allows that to sit nice and flush inside of your MFT using the existing holes. Now in this configuration, if you needed some additional support, you'll see right here that this is not a ton of surface area because this machine is a much smaller version than the existing KAPEX. All you have to do is loosen these knobs and you'll get these that come out, and you have additional support for your workpiece. Now, one thing that was always really well thought out with Festool products, especially the previous KAPEX, is that if I needed additional support, I could use one of these Sys1s and it would be the same height. But as you can see, that is no longer the case with this much smaller version. Well, Festool thought of that, and what they've provided you if you purchase the KSC 60 is these feet. And these feet basically will go underneath here and will raise this up, and you will now be the exact height of one of these if you wanted to have infinite support out to the left and right if you were using it in an application like this. And these feet don't just sit underneath that. They are actually, there's some screws that are provided. You'd screw all those in. And in this application with it raised up, you wouldn't reference the holes, because if you did reference the holes, it would bring it down. But as you can see, when it's just sitting on a work surface, whether it's a table, whether it's whatever workstation you set up on site, it's now perfectly flush. And these would give you the ability to have additional support to the left and right of the blade, and it's perfectly in line with the top of this sustainer. What we have down here is a small support leg, and if you see, I'm raising it up so just to show you that it's not actually touching the table, and that does give it the ability to rock and have a little bit of movement. So the purpose of this is to actually eliminate that movement, and what we're looking for is for that knob to basically just be supporting that weight. So there it is. Now I'm not going to have any movement. Now, if we were to use those feet that I just showed you, they do provide a longer one that will make up the difference. But now, anywhere that I move this, it's going to be supported on that work surface, and it's not just sitting out, having the ability to rock back and forth, which may throw off your cut. Now to highlight a couple of the key features about this, and the first thing that's so great about this much smaller, more compact machine is that I do not lose my cross-cut capability between this and the KS 120. I have 305 millimeters of cross-cut capacity and support with this miter saw, and that translates to just over 12 inches. The depth of cut is 60 millimeters, so around 2 3/8. KSC 60, that 60 represents the depth of cut. To change the angle on this, all I have to do is loosen this knob here, lift up on this lever, and it'll have all the standard detents that you would find on, any other miter saw. But one thing that's really great about this is the capacity is that I can go 60 degrees to the right and I can go 60 degrees to the left, which is actually more capacity than the KS 120. So we'll talk about the adjustable fence a little bit from the backside here. And what you'll notice is that the fence itself is fairly low. Now, again, everything on this machine is basically shrunk down and smaller. And this has the ability to bevel either direction. And if you want to bevel and hit those 45 or more, which I'll talk about here in just a moment, these right here are just simply removed, and it will give you the full capacity that the machine offers. Before I show you some of the bevel features, on the backside, stored conveniently in the miter saw, is the angle gauge that Festool offers with their previous KAPEX. It's also an offering on this KAPEX as well, and it just stores in there like that. It's easiest to get it out by simply moving this to the side, and it sits in place, and that's not really going to go anywhere. Now, the bevel adjustment on this is this star knob back here that we will simply loosen. And once we loosen that, it's going to give me the ability to go 45 degrees in either direction. If I come up to the top, it stops. That's my positive stop. I depress the button, which I'll show you closer up here in just a moment, and I can come the other direction, and I can go 45. It is automatically set to stop at 45, but there's an additional feature about this, and let me show you. Before I had mentioned I was pushing a green button in order to get it to pass the automatic set to 90 degrees, which what I want to focus on here is I want you to listen for a click. So right there, when you hear that click, that's passing the 90, and I can simply push right back over, and I know that I'm on 90. And before I said I had to push that button to bypass it, you only have to do that to the right. And when I come down here, you'll see right there it says 45 degrees. So this has the ability to bevel 46 degrees to the right, 47 degrees to the left. And the way that that is done, it's automatically going to stop at 45, just like it will automatically stop at 90 when you come up. So when I go down here to 45, if I push this button, it'll drop down that last degree. And if I wanted to go back to 45, now I'm back at 45. Now, as I said before, I don't need to do anything. I don't need to push any buttons to move all the way to the left. Now that I'm all the way at the left at 45, I can depress this button and I can drop those 2 additional degrees, giving me a total of 47. I'm back at 45. I'm back at 90. Now, I wanted to back up and let you guys see me kind of standing in front of it and being able to see the back of it. The machine is much smaller, and something that came up at the Festool Recharge event at Cerritos College last week was the ability and the ease of changing the angles in the back. So I just wanted you to be able to see that the machine is very small. I'm standing in front of it, and my arm's not even fully extended, and I can reach right around the back, and I can loosen this. I can make my adjustments, and then I can lock it down very, very easily. Also stored in the housing on the back side is the Allen wrench in order to change the blade, which we'll discuss. It's a slightly different process than before. Also in the back is your inlet for the dust extraction. You can hook up any hose just like you could with any other Festool product. However, this time they're giving you a bag which can be taken out, which is nice if you're just making a few quick cuts and you don't want all that dust to be spewing out the back. This does a fairly good job of policing some of that up. This is kind of like what you'd find on the cordless track saw, and it goes on and off very easily. And in order to swap it out, you would just simply unzip this and dump it in the trash. Another feature that I forgot to mention when I was talking about how to going about changing the angle here. So again, you loosen this knob and you lift up on this, and it locks the detents lock into position, right? Well, one really nice feature and something they thought of is, let's say that I wanted to get 15.5. Well, if I'm trying to get 15.5, sometimes it can be a little bit challenging because it wants to drop back in. That detent wants to relock. So what you can do is you can actually raise up this trigger and slide it over to the left, and that will lock it down, and it will not have a detent anywhere now. I can dial this thing in to the exact angle that I want, no matter how small the adjustment is. Having the ability to really fine-tune that and then lock it down so easily is a really, really nice, well-thought-out feature. I would like to highlight something that I have gotten a couple questions about, and I don't know the answer to it. I'll just be completely honest with you, and I haven't been able to get the answer. what is the max capacity that I can use cutting crown molding in a nested position. So a very specific thing. I don't know the answer to that. What I can tell you is that the height of this fence here to this line is 60 millimeters, and the support that you have out here on this corner is 80 millimeters. So 2 3/8, and 2 5/8 roughly. I still have the very large crosscut capacity, but the space here, because of its smaller nature, is also much smaller. So I don't know if those measurements will help you if you are one of the people that has asked that question, but that's about the only answer that I can give. Now some features with the head unit itself. It operates off 2 18-volt batteries, giving you 36-volt capability. These slide in very easily, just like this. You do not need both batteries in order to operate the machine. The machine can be operated off just one battery if you were in a pinch, and I will show you that here in just a moment. You do have the variable speed adjustment like most Festool products. That would come in handy depending on the material that you're cutting. Now, the way that you can actually unlock the head is by depressing this here, and it will give you free access to move the saw up and down. And to start the saw, it's a combination of a couple of things. Depressing down on this to unlock the head, and then lifting up on this trigger. But as you'll notice, there is a safety switch here. That safety switch needs to be depressed in order to activate the saw. It's an ambidextrous handle, just like before, but the switch is only on one side. So if you're operating the tool from the right-hand side, I'm going to place my hand over. I'm just going to depress this button and pull it or plate it. Stops very quickly. Now, if I was using it from the left-hand side, using my left hand, the only difference is I would just be pushing the button with my finger here. Obviously, you can tell the machine sounds much different. If you've ever gone from a corded track saw to a cordless track saw, you'll notice a pretty big difference as well, and it's because it has the EC Tech brushless motor in it. This is not the same motor that is in the existing KAPEX. This is a brushless motor. The blade stops much faster, it sounds very different, and it's much more efficient, which is why the battery life combined with the brushless motor is so good. And again, if you've ever used the track saw, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I did mention that this only runs on one battery. If you do only use one battery, understand you're going to get 50% power, right? But the battery that needs to be in is the battery that is on the top. So you heard the power that it is at 100%. This is what it is at 50. So while it is at 50% power, half the battery, in the event that you needed to make a couple of extra cuts and get one of those batteries on the charger, you definitely have the ability to do so. So like all Festool stuff, anything that's green does something. So I want to make sure I show you what all those things are. So this right here is your arbor lock, and that's going to be how we go ahead and change the blade, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. This right here is just a knob that tightens this down to stop this from moving, right? So if I wanted to lock it in place, just make vertical cuts, that's fine. If I wanted to loosen this so I have the sliding ability, that's fine. One thing I will say is that this slides very, very smooth. That was one of the very first things that I noticed when I started cutting with it, is how smooth it glides back and forth. Now this lever right here, let's say I wanted to store the head down and lock it in place for transport. That's what that is for. Keeps that head down in a locked position. And this saw also does have the ability to do trenching cuts. If you wanted to do a groove, a dado, that's what this lever right here for is. You pull it all the way forward. If I wanted to go shallower, I would turn this clockwise. And if I wanted to go deeper and really dial it in, I would go counterclockwise, and then I can just make my cuts at whatever depth that I want while moving the board. All right, I've saved my favorite feature for last, and that is this button here, which is the shadow line. Now, I have been asked quite a few times already or been told that people are interested to see my opinions on the shadow line versus the laser. This is not the first miter saw that I've owned that had a shadow line. So when I lower this down, what you're going to see, and I'll bring you in close so you can truly see exactly what I'm talking about. There's a light in here that casts a shadow on the blade. Now, there's a couple benefits that I see to that. One, you don't have to adjust it. It's always reflecting the blade. The other thing that I really like about it is that it shows the line in the front of the board as well, which is a really nice, convenient, handy feature. But exactly where that shadow is, that is where it's going to cut. I am a very big fan of the shadow line. The other benefit is that you're not going to have the diminished quality of the shadow that sometimes with the laser you can have, because one, a laser is adjustable, and two, it can get dirty. The lens can get dirty, and it can make it appear like your laser is not as bright. So you have to keep an eye on that. But the thing that I like about it is no matter what wood you're using, it's consistent. I also find that it's a lot easier to see this when it's outdoors, and there's a lot more light involved. Sometimes that red laser or a colored laser can be a little bit harder to see. So really, really glad that they decided to do the shadow line. And again, it's very easy to turn on and off. So the final thing that I want to talk about is clamp down options. And before I go and set this thing up on the entire system to show you what the whole thing looks like all together and the portability of it, but that is the clamping element. I would have liked to have seen the same clamp that is on the other KAPEX. However, it does come with one of their screw-style clamps, and it just slides into the back, and it does a very good job. And while I don't love the screw-type clamp, where I think that it works well is the fact that these are very easy to raise and lower, unlike a traditional one where you have to sit there and crank it. I can actually get it exactly where I need it and then be able to use it no problem. And this just slides in and out on both sides. My assumption for the reasoning behind this is the clamp that comes on the KS120, the corded version, is a very big, beefy clamp. And trying to keep this small and compact, it doesn't make a ton of sense in order to have a big, beefy clamp like that. And this is just a lot easier to take on and off and slide in and out on a job site. Now, I know that there are some people out there that are wondering, well, can't I just use my quick ratcheting clamp from Festool? And that depends is the answer. It depends on how tall the material is. So the biggest difference between this clamp here and the screw clamp is, while yes, you can use this, is I have the ability to get much deeper on the screw clamp than I do this, because there's not that much space right there, right? So you don't have a lot of air, so that the fence could get in the way. So there's a couple of different things you can do. I can go like this, and I can test it and say, is this going to reach? No. See how it's loose? It's not actually applying pressure on anything because that bar is hitting the fence. So what you can do is, this is an oversized piece. I wouldn't use a piece like this, but you can use an auxiliary piece on top to hold it in place, and then you can do that. So the trade-off between these two is, do you want to have that additional material always on hand and making sure that that's lined up, or do you just want to use the standard clamp and just plop it down, tighten it down twice, and it's good to go? Yes, you can use the other one. This is the one that they send. It's very, very simple to use. One other thing that I do like about this setup is that if I needed it out of the way, while you can't turn this one out of the way like you could previous ones, I can simply slide it back, and when I need it, it's there. So I can just put this on the back side of the fence, and it's not in the way. Now I want to show you guys the stand, because this is an option in a couple of different configurations. If you already have one of the UG stands for the KAPEX, well, guess what? The stand itself has not changed. The stand is exactly the same. What has changed is the tray, and that's what this is. And putting the saw in here, which you're going to see in just a moment, is very, very simple. You see these 4 posts right here. They line up with corresponding holes on the KAPEX, and then you simply add these 4 screws right here. So let's go ahead and knock that out. Now, before I actually tighten all the screws down, there's some green knobs underneath that actually attach to these screws, and you can adjust those so you can make sure that everything is nice and level. And so once I have that done, I'll go ahead and tighten down my screws, and we'll get some dimensions. I want to highlight and demonstrate the transportation and the ease of setup and teardown on this machine. But before I do that, and before we put the wings and everything else on, I want to give you guys some rough dimensions. This is not going to be, exactly what it says is advertised through the book, but you're looking at about 33 inches wide from this side to this side. This is where the wings will get attached to, for those of you that have not used them before. Height to the bed, you're looking at 35 inches. So that's where this is. And let's see if I can do a rough estimate. Here, you're looking at about 55 inches tall to the top of this with the head in the upright position. Now let's talk about how easy it is to store this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this at 60 degrees. I'm going to lock this down. I'm then going to take the head. I'm going to depress that down, make sure that's locked, make sure this is locked, and now we're in a good position. Little carrying handle right here if when it's in a locked position where you can carry it around. So in order to collapse this, if you were to keep this in the stand, all you would have to do is you just lift up, this leg comes out, and then I'm going to take this and tilt it down. Now I have a handle, it locks in right here. There's a locking lever, just locks in like that. And it's very, very portable, very, very easy to move. Also would be very nice if you're limited on power and space in a garage. This would be able to fold up and go right up against a wall. And I did get quite a few questions on what the dimensions for this configuration are. So the height of it folded up in this configuration is 36 inches. The depth, give you a rough estimate here. You're looking at about 25 inches total. So very, very small form factor. And the wings, if you're going to get it in the configuration, this is both wings together and they're strapped together with this strap. So these don't take much space at all. I'll put it right next to it just so you can kind of see the difference between the two. Now I'll put the extension wings on so you can see that configuration. To undo this, you just loosen that lever. This comes down. This lifts up. Once you come up here and clear it, it actually lines up very, very well when you're setting that up. So let me get these extension wings put on. This is the configuration, the full complete kit, right? If you were to get like the works package of this new miter saw, this would be everything. And this is how much support you would have there. Just to give you an idea, the one I got is metric because, why not use metric? This is 125.5 inches from one end to the other, but it gets better. What a lot of people don't know about these extension wings is that they actually extend out further. That's what this knob is for. You turn this knob and loosen it. You flip up this stop here, and now this extends out. And I'm going to go, let's see, as far as I can get it. There we go. Now, I don't even know, I may have put this a little bit too close to the wall, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get this. Okay, so I cannot get this all the way. I am about 3 or 4 inches short, but it's okay. That's how long this is. This is a big area right here. All right, now let's get an idea. "16 feet. 16 feet. I can get a full 8-foot long board supported on one side and have the ability to make repeat cuts anywhere in between. Cool feature that I wanted to share that not a lot of people actually know even exists, because just by looking at it, you may just think that that's a stop, but they actually do go out. And then each side does come with its own stop here. What I want to do now is I want to make, I don't know, we'll say 3 cuts, 4 cuts, something like that. Cutting through some of this 8-quarter white oak, and I'm basically just going to waste this for this video. But one, I want to demonstrate the cut with the saw, and I want to do it in 2 different ways, and that is with the bag and with dust extraction hooked up to it. And I'll kind of show you the difference of the machine as well as, down on the ground or the surrounding area, just to kind of give you an idea of the difference between dust collection. I'm not going to cut it without anything on it because I'm not a maniac. So let's go ahead and make a few cuts. I'll show you the dust remaining after just those 3 cuts. Again, this is without any dust extraction hooked up to it. I haven't moved anything. So as you can imagine, it's a miter saw. It spews a lot of dust. What I will say, though, is that there's not a lot behind it. So now let's go ahead and clean this up real quick. And then I'm going to hook the dust extraction up, but now you have a basis to reference. Everything is cleaned off. I've got my dust extraction hooked up via Bluetooth to my vac. I'll go ahead and make the same 3 cuts, and we'll see what the difference is. All right, as you can see, I made 3 cuts. Not seeing any on the floor. That's a significant difference between the 2. So with dust extraction and without, pretty impressive. This is a new tool demo, so I know that everybody's going to want to know the accuracy right out of the box. So to save myself from the comments, I figure I might as well do some quick accuracy cuts. And that looks pretty dang square to me. I have surface contact along the entire piece. So now I suppose I might as well make a couple of 45s, 1 from each direction, and let's see if that comes out to be 90. Check it, and same result. So 2 45s equal 90. Nice, good, tight joint. Seems pretty accurate. I did want to take a moment to discuss the dust hood on this saw versus the other. So the other one's a much more large, robust, beefy. It's actually quite a bit wider. This one is quite a bit more narrow. And I do feel like the distance from the blade to this is significantly smaller. But one thing I really like about it is that the other one is really, really thick, like, rubber. This is a very thin, pliable material. I mean, it's rubber. But I feel like it just conforms to the material a lot better. and you don't get that binding that you would traditionally, but the angle in which it comes out of the back, to me, appears to be more in line with the blade. So I don't know if that's what's helping, but I'm really impressed by the dust collection with the extractor hooked up to it. To be honest with you, even with it not. Matter of fact, let me show you what was left in the bag from those 3 cuts. Dump all this dust out. I have no idea how much is in here. Remember, this was just 3 cuts that I made in that white oak. Three cuts. And that's all the dust that the miter saw captured with just the bag. Pretty impressive. I did mention I'd go through changing out the blade. This is just the blade that comes with the saw, which is more of a universal blade. Of course, I want to make sure I remove my batteries, seeing as how this is battery operated. We don't want it to go off while I'm changing this out. For those of you that are wondering, it's a 216 millimeter blade, which is 8.5 inch blade. The kerf on these blades is 2.3 millimeters. Get that arbor lock on the back side and get it locked, so now it's locked in place. And once it's locked in place, we can actually remove our finger. I've tilted the blade over just a little bit, just because it helps not drop these things, and replace it with a more fine, higher tooth count crosscut blade. I just realized there is one detail that I forgot to mention while I was doing the overview, and that is the weight of the miter saw, and the weight of this is just over 38 pounds. To close this video out, I'm going to be talking about the 3 most important things, and that is battery life, price, and who I think it's right for. Now, I know this is going to be disappointing to some people, but I want to talk about the battery life. I did not do any sort of test to find out the length that the batteries will run, because at the end of the day, it just doesn't matter. No matter what test I did, there would be multiple people out there that would say, well, yeah, you're cutting X wood, or yeah, it's not that wide, or yeah, it's not that thick. What I can tell you is that the amount of runtime that you get from the batteries is 100% dependent on the material you're cutting and the blade that you are using, period. So to me, in this scenario for this video, doing the test just didn't make a lot of sense. Here's what I will say. I have experience using the cordless platform of 2 of their 18-volt batteries on a tool, being the track saw. This entire miter saw station that you see behind me, to include the drawers, the top, the boxes, everything, I built and made every single cut with the cordless track saw that has the same 2 batteries, has a brushless motor, and I made every single cut over multiple days with that tool. It wasn't until my very last drawer front, halfway through, the batteries gave out. So I say all of that to say this. If you are going to be using this tool, 99% of us would never kill the batteries in one day. And that includes people that are on the job site. I do know a couple people have done tests. They've got varying results based on material. We have 170 something cuts in white oak. I don't know how wide it was. I don't know how thick it was. My friend Ronnie Fulton just did a test, and he was cutting down 2x6s and got over 300 cuts. So again, to me at this point, it's irrelevant. All I can say is that the batteries are going to last 99% of people an entire day of work in the shop. And to go even further on that, if you're buying this cordless track saw, it's very likely that you're already in the ecosystem anyways. So you're going to have batteries as a spare. And if you get the energy set that comes with the new dual charger, you'll never have any issues with battery power. Now let's talk about the 4 different configurations in terms of cost. You have what's known as the basic set, which is the miter saw with no batteries. The other accessories, not the stand, but the other accessories like the feet that will raise it up are included. The dust bag is included. Obviously, you get a blade, but no batteries, no charger, $9.99. Now, the next step up from that is the Plus, And that is going to come with the Duo charger and two 5.2 amp hour batteries, which is known as the Energy Set. Everything else in the basic, plus the batteries and the charger, that is $1,298. Now, the next configuration is like the Plus. Basically what it is what I just told you. So the miter saw, the Energy Set, meaning the charger and the two batteries, and this adapter tray for the UG stand. So this is an option because if you already have the UG stand and wings, you obviously don't need to buy them again unless you want to. But you can utilize this on your existing stand that houses your other KAPEX if that's what you're using it for. The price on that package is $14.97. And finally, the configuration that you saw me ending the video with, and that is the entire thing, right? You have the wings, you have the tray, you have the stand, you have the miter saw with the batteries, charger, Energy Set, all that good stuff, everything, $22.97. So the entire mobile setup, that's what you're looking at, $2,297. Who do I think it's good for? Well, if you're doing job site work, you're already in the Festool ecosystem, you want a small, portable, compact, very accurate, very powerful machine, then it's for you. If you're somebody that's limited on space and limited on power in your shop, I also think it may be an option for you to consider because you have really good capacity in a very small saw that is going to last all day long for most people with what they're doing on those two batteries. My opinions on battery platforms have changed significantly ever since I had the realization that 80% of hobbyists that are in a garage like me are probably on limited power. Maybe they're in a rental and it has one plug, like when I started, on one breaker, and it's 15 amps, and every time you plug two tools into it, it breaks. That's a big reality for a lot of people. And because of that, I think battery-operated tools have a place in home shops as well for some instances. So just something for you guys to consider. Time will tell. I'll be using this a lot. I hope you guys got some of the questions that you had answered, and it helps you make a determination should you want to order this. It's available for pre-order right now. I believe they start shipping these on May 12th. You can go visit the website and find out all the details that you need to for this, but it's a great saw. I got to use it over a year ago. I'm just glad that it's finally out now for everybody else to use. Thanks for watching.